Now, if you don't know the basics of UV unwrapping, I suggest you watch my, actually let's backtrack a little bit. I suggest you watch my how to UV unwrap an object tutorial. However, in that tutorial, we only UV unwrapped it and then went into Blender. We never actually rendered it. So that's what we're going to be doing in this tutorial more so. So to start UV unwrapping, let's split our 3D view window by selecting this arrow up here and clicking and dragging on it, and split the window roughly in half. Now in your window selection button down here, select the UV/image editor and you'll see we have this grid here. So basically this is 2D and this is 3D. So I'm just going to show you a little trick here, or I'm just going to show you this quickly. You'll see now that what I've done is I've automatically had Blender create a 2D representation of our 3D model. So let me explain this in real life very quickly. So we have our milk container. Let me try to put it back together. We have our milk container that looks somewhat like this. Now, UV unwrapping, as the name suggests, is unwrapping an object. So it's just like cutting. So you think about it, how am I going to unwrap this? Well, I would cut out the bottom so it's like that, and then I would cut out a side so that it unfolds, and I would also I'd also cut the top apart so that it unfolds completely flat. So we have a completely flat object now from what was originally a 3D object. This is the same thing. You can see the similarities on screen almost. So to do that in Blender, what we do, the way I did it is an automatic way, but it doesn't work all the time. It only works on extremely simple geometry like this. Instead, I'm gonna show you how to do it manually so that you can do it on any model. So to do that, we need to create what are called seams. Now, seams are added by going Mesh, Edges, Mark Seam. Or you can press Control-E, Mark Seam, but I'm going to be using the menus for today. So we need to go into line select mode so that we can select certain lines to basically cut apart. We're basically using scissors in Blender. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select where I want to cut. So the first line I want to cut, we can turn off our manipulators by now by pressing this little, I don't know what you'd call it, kind of like a star button, but that button right there, and that will turn off the manipulators since we don't need them right now. So to start cutting, I'm going to select this line. We could select any line. You can start anywhere. And then I'm going to go Mesh, Edges, Mark Seam. So that now is marked as a seam. And you'll see after we've marked it as a seam that it turns red. At any time, if you make a mistake, just select your seam and then go Mesh, Edges, Clear Seam, and you'll see it's not red anymore. But we want that to be a seam. We want that to be a part of our cut, so we are going to mark it as a seam. Okay, so it's going to be cut along that edge right there. But if we did that, it's not going to do much of anything. If we tried to unwrap that right now, you'll see we just get a mess. So we need to make some more cuts. So where would we cut it next? Well, maybe let's start at the bottom because that's fairly easy. Let's try cutting this edge right here. So let's Mesh, Edges, Mark Seam. And that probably isn't going to cut open at all. So let's maybe mark this seam as one. Mesh, Edges, Mark Seam, Mark Seam. And since that's a four edged face, like since that face down there, that little plane basically has four faces, or four edges, sorry, we probably need to cut 3 of them. So let's select the third one and let's add another seam. So now if we tried to unwrap it, to unwrap anything at any time to preview it, what you do is you select it all. So you go select, and then select this one here where it's D or select all, and press it until you get everything in orange. I'm going to tell you it's much quicker just to press A to select and deselect. So we're actually going to use that as a hotkey. I'm going to skip that in the menu, but just so you know, it is in the select menu. So press A and then go Mesh, UV Unwrap, and press Unwrap. And you'll get a representation of what your current cut looks like. So you can see that our bottom is cut out perfectly. That's great. We're off to a good start. I'm going to undo that by pressing Control Z. I'm going to deselect by pressing A, and I'm going to continue thinking where to cut things out. This is where a little bit of problem solving skills comes into play. So where would I want to cut this out next? Well, if I look at my box, I'm probably going to need to cut out these two edges as well. So let's mark those as cuts and see what happens. We can always go back. And then we can preview what that change does by going A to select all, Mesh, UV Unwrap, Unwrap. So we're starting to get somewhere. That's pretty close to what we need. So let's undo that. So what else needs cutting? Well, we probably need to cut the top out somehow. So let's stay the same way. We know that we don't have anything cut on the back, so maybe let's keep it that way. Let's only cut from the front for now. Let's try cutting this triangle out and see what happens. Let's preview it. Whoops. Mesh, UV Unwrap, Mesh, UV Unwrap, Unwrap, and it'll update it. Or you can go Mesh, UV Unwrap, Reset, and then Mesh, UV Unwrap, Unwrap. Well, we're getting somewhere, but it's still not quite right. I'm starting to see triangles in there, but not quite. So maybe we need to cut these two edges too. So let's mark those. So let's preview that. Mesh, UV Unwrap, Unwrap. Well, we now have our triangle completely cut out, so that's good, but the rest of them aren't quite perfect. So let's cut out this top piece right here. It seems, if I select everything, it seems to kind of be wonky there. It's not quite right. So let's unwrap all of the sides. I'm going to show you a little trick. If you use our selecting more than one method, so that's shift and right clicking on more than one thing, you can mark more than one at once. So let's mark all three of the other sides of this top piece as seams. So mesh, edges, mark seam. You'll now see that it marked all of them at once. That will save us time. So now let's try unwrapping it. You can now see it's a completely separate object. That's great. That's perfect. And now we see our other triangle here. We see our bottom. We can see these parts, which are the sides of our triangles, and these sides, which are the sides of our box. This is basically good enough for me. However, things aren't straight. I'm just going to take this window till you get your arrows. I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger. So if we zoom in, we can see things aren't straight, and I like things to be straight. So to do that, all you have to do is you can now work in this area almost the same way as you did in the 3D view. You can right click on certain things to select them. You work with vertexes in here or edges. They're still the same tools, or faces, or island selection, which selects entire parts. But that's a more advanced topic. We'll just stick with edges for now, or vertexes. And again, you can press A to select and deselect things. So let's straighten some things out. So we can see right here, since we cut this one out, that it's perfectly straight. So we're going to use that as a reference. So we know that line's straight, so we're going to use that as a reference. Let's select these three lines by holding down Shift and right clicking on them. And let's go and see how we can straighten these out. Let's go through the menus. View, no, doesn't look like anything. Select, no. Image, no. UVs. Oh, there's all sorts of options in here. Well, let's see what kind of options there are. None of these are making a lot of sense. Transform. We could rotate them manually. Let's see if there's anything easier. Snap. No, I don't think so. Weld, align. That sounds about right. I want to align these. So right here we see, oh, straighten. Perfect. So let's try straightening in the Y and see what happens. Nothing. Well, okay, let's try the X. Weld, align, straighten X. Nothing. Well, okay, let's try auto. Align auto. Hey, that did something, but it screwed up our original one. So let's undo that. Control Z. And let's try align X. Whoa, I really screwed things up. So let's try Y. Align Y. I did the same thing as align auto. So what that's telling me is that I maybe need to use this as a reference by selecting it also. So let's select that one and see what happens. So UVs, weld align, align Y. There you go. It's completely straight. However, now it's screwed up this one. That's no problem though. So let's do that to the top part. So let's select these four and let's align them on the Y. Align Y. Alright, things are starting to get straighter. Now we need to align these ones. So let's select this one, and this one, and this one since it's in line with this, and this one since they're in line, and let's see if we can straighten those out automatically, basically. Now, this isn't the Y direction, this is the X direction. Nope, didn't work. Let's try just doing one at a time. Let's try this line right here. UVs, weld align, align X. There, that straightened them right out. Now let's do this one next. So select those two and same thing. Align X. Perfect, we're really getting somewhere. Now this is just a preference. You don't have to do this, but if you didn't have everything straightened out, you would have to compensate that for when you went and painted on this. Because if you painted on this side right here, everything when you went back and put it onto your model, it would get stretched back out that little bit because it would straighten it back out for us. So everything being straight makes basically whatever you paint onto here will be projected perfectly onto our 3D model. So we're just going to keep aligning this. So there, that's all of our sides of our container aligned. Now we need to work on the triangle. This side that we marked seams, that's already perfectly aligned, so I'm not going to worry about that. But these ones aren't quite right. So we could do them separately, or we could align them manually. I think it would actually be best to do it the same as this way, to cut them out manually. So let's bring our window back over. Let's rotate around our view. That's middle mouse button and drag, again if you don't know. And let's just cut out this whole triangle. So let's select this edge, and this edge, mesh, edges, mark seam. And then go mesh, UV unwrap, unwrap. Let's see what happened. There, now we had both our triangles unwrapped. So that looks like it'll work just like that. Here's a little hint I want to show you. In your model, you see if I select and deselect, it gets rid of and enables the unwrapping. But if I select just one edge that's marked as a seam, or sorry, just one face, so if I select, let me make it a bit bigger here. If I go into face mode and select this face, since it's unwrapped, you'll see it's the only thing that shows up in the view. And if you go into the UV/image editor window and you press G to grab, you can move it around. So why this is important, let me just select everything again, is if we wanted, say, the same image on all four sides of our of our milk container. So 1, 2, 3, 4. If we wanted the same image on all 4 sides, we could use face select in the UV panel. We could select all 4 sides, or sorry, we have to do them one at a time. We could select one, and then we could grab it, and we could overlap it with the other one. And we could take this one and we could overlap it on top of there. So now whatever is painted onto one will be on top of one another. So that's a way to save space in a UV unwrap. But you can see, because we didn't cut everything out manually like we did the triangles, because they're not cut out separately, they got stretched. But that was just a little information for you. We now have a perfectly UV unwrapped object. I am going to do a little bit of reorganization. These 2 triangles, they are supposed to be connected like that, but these right here, they're a little too close for comfort. So I'm simply going to select all of these by shift and right clicking. I'm just going to press S to scale them down. I'm just going to scale them down slightly. This won't affect our image in the end. It will just affect how much resolution we have. So it's not a big issue. Realistically, you want your UV unwrap to be as big as possible. So we could take this, for example, if it was an important object, although it's just the top, and we could scale it up. And then we could grab and we could put it wherever we wanted, and that would allow us to put more detail into it. But that's something for another day. So I'm happy with that. So now we need to go and put some color and paint onto it. So to do that, all you do is you go Image, so all you do is you go UVs, export UV layout. So now select somewhere where you will remember where this image is at. I already have a bookmark called UV Unwrap, so I'm going to use that. I'm going to make a new folder called Milk Container. I like to keep things organized. And I'm going to save in the PNG format. That's down here. You can select the different formats. As you can see, Blender doesn't support very many. Vector is useful if you want to scale things up as much as you want, but 99.9% of the time you're going to use PNG. You can also select the size, so you can make a huge texture if you wanted. I think it can go up, I don't know how high it can go up. Usually your textures are no bigger than 8,128. 4,096 pixels is about as big as you'd want to go usually, and 8,192 is really pushing it. That's really large. So unless you want a really high quality image and you have really high quality photographs to use as textures, I suggest you just use the stock size or smaller, or you could go slightly bigger. But since we're just going to have small details, and since we're not using photographs, this is a perfectly fine size of 1024 by 1024. So we're just going to export it as, I'm just going to call this unwrap.png, and then I'm going to hit export UV layout. Now you can open it up in any program you want.